Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I've got 16 articles for you this morning. All the URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. First one here is off of Teddy Stick. This is a new site for me to report off of. It says Egypt issues bold military response following Islamic attack on Christians. Was one of the bleakest days in recent history as ISIS radicals massacred 28 Coptic Christians, people who have been in the land since long before Muhammad was born, much less mention of Islam. Original dwellers only matter to the world when it is referring to stealing Jewish land for Muslim occupants. The Gateway pundit say that not all who are of the Islamic faith are so. However, Egypt redeemed those followers of Christ who were killed on a bus by hitting Daesh with airstrikes. It is now known. Reuters reported Egypt has launched airstrikes on Libya, state news agency, and there's pics on Twitter. Reported in Reuters that Egypt attacked Libya in a forceful strike. The attack was directed at camps where militants who attacked Christians in Egypt were training. For those who have questioned why President Donald Trump did not include that nation on the travel ban, the answer has been given. Who have questioned why President Donald Trump did not include that nation on his travel, they put that in there twice, I guess. The answer has been given. RT has affirmed that Egyptian fighter jets have struck militant camps following the deadly attack on Egypt's Christians. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has announced. The strikes were carried out in eastern Libya, according to state television. The president of Egypt, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, is bold in stating that this is not an isolated airstrike and that he plans to disseminate anyone who carries out terror in his country, regardless of where the camp is, allowed to turn it into rubble. The leader reiterated that the country's financing, training, and arming terrorists should not get away unpunished. While talk is as cheap as their desert sand, the actions that come along with it are not. That the Muslim nation stands to vehemently opposed to terror. In fact, on TV this past Friday after Christian carnage, he said, "We will not hesitate to protect our people from the evil." The story is still breaking, and new developments are sure to arise as ISIS understands that the walls are closing in now quite rapidly. Caliphate is as good as over. The next article I have for you is off of Liberty Headlines. Giving the hamster a chance to catch up to us here. He's running as fast as he can go. Here it goes. Power of Trump displayed as he keeps diplomats swamp guessing on NATO. The diplomatic world is in a tizzy about whether or not Donald Trump is committed to NATO's mutual defense pledge, and the White House is now offering reassurances. And the president's failure to explicitly back the North Atlantic Treaty Organization's Article 5 requirement has cost him heartburn. It also cost him some unwanted backlash during his 2016 campaign. First, let's look at today's brouhaha. After Trump spent much of 2016 saying NATO was obsolete and refusing to say clearly whether the U.S. would provide defense for the Baltic nations of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia if they were attacked, the president reassured everyone last month that the mutual aid organization is no longer obsolete. remained was for him to explicitly restate support for Article 5, which states that the on any one NATO nation is considered an attack on all, and that all will lend military aid to rebut such an attack. NATO summit in Belgium, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson was among the administration officials who said Trump is specifically committed to Article 5 and would make that clear in his speech, thus reassuring Latvia. But when the time came, Trump left that commitment out of his speech. Insiders were aghast. The leaders of NATO were hoping to hear those words of affirmation, said Ivo Dowler, a former U.S. ambassador to NATO, in an interview with MSNBC. It didn't happen, and that was a problem. Left, center, and right all seized on the lack of specifically to wonder if Trump again was indicating the U.S. might renege. That would be important if the president personally and explicitly states it, said Latvian Foreign Ministry State Secretary Pilotovics. Minus the presidential seal, the whole scenario echoed a similar eruption of concern last summer when Trump refused to reassure the Baltic nations. That refusal, combined with his remarks about NATO's alleged obsolescence, played a significant role, although in leading 50 former Republican foreign policy officials to issue a letter blasting Trump and saying he could not be with foreign affairs. Indeed, Trump's statements that rattled NATO last summer were by some accounts the final catalyst for the circulation of the letter, which garnered nationwide headlines and caused a campaign setback for Trump at the time. But a number of signatories of the letter have since praised some Trump moves in foreign policy, especially after his statement that NATO is no longer obsolete. Among them, James Jeffrey, former Deputy National Security Advisor, who lauded Trump this very trip to reassert traditional U.S. policy in the Middle East. The point for Trump is not that he needs of these former officials, but that on broad goals, they actually share similar outlooks with Trump, and some of their expertise could help. As it was, Trump's entire speech at NATO seemed designed to rattle some cages in order to spur NATO nations to abide by their own obligations to spend at least a minimum set amount on defense as their part of keeping the alliance strong. In fact, this emphasis by Trump seemed during the campaign as well, with the refusal to affirm Article 5 intended as a way to scare the European nations into living up to their part of the bargain. Still, after the speech, Trump aides hastened to assure questioners that Trump implication already recommitted to Article 5 because he praised the provision specifically when noting that it was invoked to American benefit after 9/11 and because the ceremony itself was in celebration of the alliance. As noted by the Washington Post, asked about Trump not explicitly affirming U.S. support for Article 5, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said, "It goes without saying, then underscores our commitment and treaty obligations." So, about whether something unsaid can indeed go without saying, to obsess about such things. The next article is off of barenakedislam.com. And the hamsters are running in the wheel, battling this lack of connection speed I seem to have to the internet. Come on. Okay, this one says Ramading Dong, or not, that's not right. Ramadan Dong, I guess is how that's supposed to be pronounced, in Egypt with a bang, and as Islamic terrorists murdered a dozen of Coptic Christians. Children were among the dozens slaughtered as Islamic terrorist gunmen, not necessarily ISIS, ambushed a convoy of Egyptian Coptic Christians. No immediate claim of responsibility. He put this out. It says gunmen opened fire on 2 buses and a truck carrying Coptic Christians in Manya, Egypt on Friday, killing at least 28, including children. Some 24 people were also injured in the attack. The group of between 8 and 10 gunmen, reportedly dressed in military uniforms, according to eyewitnesses, approached the convoy in 3 four-wheel drive pickup trucks before opening fire, according to local media reports and the Egyptian Interior Ministry. They used automatic weapons. Bedleway, governor of Minya, told state television, as cited by the AFP. Heavily armed special forces and local police established a perimeter around the scene and launched a hunt for setting up dozens of roadblocks in the area and sending out patrols to scour the desert road. The Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmad Al-Tayyib, believes the attack was intended to destabilize the country. Al-Azhar of Islamic learning in Egypt and dates back more than 1,000 years. And there are pictures in that article if you care to pull them up and take a look at them. Next article is off of newsmax.com. Someone said the other day they thought that my connection was 2 tin cans and a string, and I told them they were giving it too much credit. A couple of rocks duct taped to a garden hose, and the garden hose has holes in it. Okay, here we go. This is off of Newsmax. It says Trump travel ban blocked for Supreme Court. Revised travel ban speaks with vague words of national security, but in context drips with religious intolerance, discrimination. Federal appeals court said Thursday in a ruling against the executive order targeting 6 Muslim majority countries. The administration vowed to take the fight to the U.S. Supreme Court. In a 10-3 vote, Circuit Court of Appeals said the ban likely violates the Constitution, and it upheld a lower court ruling that blocks the Republican administration from cutting off visas for people from Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. The Richmond, Virginia-based Fourth Circuit Appeals Court to rule on the revised travel ban unveiled in March. Trump's administration had hoped it would avoid legal problems that the first version from January encountered. Court, the 9th U.S. Circuit based in San Francisco, is also weighing the revised travel ban after a federal judge in Hawaii blocked it. Almost certainly would step into the case if asked. The justices almost always have the final say when a lower court strikes down a federal law or presidential action. Persuade the Supreme Court to allow the policy to take effect, even while the justices weigh whether to hear the case by arguing that the court orders blocking the ban make the country less safe. If the administration does ask the court to step in, the justices' first vote could signal the court's ultimate decision. In the case before the Fourth Circuit was whether courts should consider Trump's public statements about wanting to bar Muslims from entering the country as evidence that the policy was primarily motivated by the religion. Trump's administration argued the court should look beyond the text of the executive order, which doesn't mention religion. The countries were not chosen because they are predominantly Muslim, but because they present terrorism risk, the administration said. But Chief Judge Roger L. wrote that the government's asserted national security interest appears to be a post hoc secondary justification for an executive action rooted in religious animus Muslims from this country. Attorney General Jeff Sessions said the court ruling blocks Trump's efforts to strengthen the country's national security. Trump is not required to admit people from countries that sponsor or shelter terrorism until he determines that they can be properly vetted and don't pose a security threat, Sessions said. Dissenting judges, all appointed by Republican presidents, said the majority was wrong to look beyond the text of the order, calling the executive order a action. Nehmeyer wrote that the Supreme Court precedent required the court to consider the order on its face. The executive order is entirely without constitutional fault, he wrote. Salmon, a law professor at Georgia Mason University, said if the Supreme Court follows a partisan divide, the Trump administration may face bitter since 5 of the 9 are Republican nominees. Still, he said, it's difficult to make a confident prediction because Supreme Court justices don't always vote in an ideological lockstep. Issued January the 27th was aimed at 7 countries and triggered chaos and protest across the country as travelers were stopped on flights and detained at airports for hours. Trump tweaked the order after the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals refused to reinstate the ban. The version made it clear the 90-day ban covered those 6 countries, doesn't apply to those who've already valid visas. It got rid of language that would give priority to religious minorities and remove from the list of banned countries. Critics said the changes don't erase the legal problems with the ban. By the Fourth Circuit was originally brought by Maryland by American Civil Liberties Union and the National Immigration Law Center on behalf of the organizations as well as people who live in the U.S. and fear the executive order will prevent them from being reunited with family members from the banned countries. President Trump's Muslim ban violates the Constitution, as this decision strongly reaffirms, said Omar, director of the ACLU's Immigrants' Rights Project, who argued the case. The Constitution's prohibition on actions disfavoring or condemning any religion is a fundamental protection for us all. All be glad that the court today rejected the government's request aside. Next article I have for you is off of usapoliticstoday.com. And the hamsters are running. And federal judges demand Americans surrender to Islam. What's your response? Federal judges invent a new legal standard where can be discarded to resist President Trump. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals invented a new legal standard granting Muslims unlimited power over national security in their decision to maintain the injunction against President Trump's travel ban executive order. Judges in the majority upheld the decision of the district courts that executive order violated the Fourth Amendment campaign rhetoric, inventing a new legal standard. The order, called the nation from foreign terrorist entry, speaks with vague words of national security, but in context drips with religious intolerance, animus, ruled the activist judges. Decision relies on newly created legal standard that has no basis in previous Supreme Court decisions. The new standard allows plaintiffs to block neutral government actions on the basis of campaign and looking behind the face of the government's action for facts to show the alleged bad faith. The majority grants itself the power to conduct extra-textual search for evidence suggesting bad faith, which is exactly what the three Supreme Court opinions have prohibited in the dissent. Now, for the first time, rejects these holdings in favor of its politically desired outcome, continued Judge Nehmeyer, who by just two other judges. However, in a 10-3 ruling, the majority have had their way, and the decision will surely be brought before the Supreme Court, where the matter will be settled once and for all. The activist decision is dangerous, establishing a new legal standard that will have a chilling effect on speech, but the ruling will also allow Muslim plaintiffs to petition the courts to block just about any government action that predominantly affects Muslim majority countries. Further, the court creates a new standard where the feeling of a plaintiff can grant standing before a court. The Muslim plaintiff attempting to block the executive order was not affected by the travel ban directly, but claims the order increases hostilities toward Muslim Americans. Essentially, activist judges are creating a new legal standard where the president can be blocked from acting in the name of national security if a member of the minority group finds the action offensive. Is upheld by the Supreme Court, it will effectively block President Trump from taking any action against Muslim countries due to the statements he made during a campaign offering unlimited protection to terrorist countries. The article is off of the gatewaypundit.com. Now, spokesman in Seth Rich's case, Brad Bauman, tied to Media Matters' David Brock. Spokesperson for the family of the late DNC staffer and suspected WikiLeaks source, Seth Rich, is a man named Brad Bauman, who happens to be directly connected to the Media Matters founder and George Soros-backed propagandist. This recent discovery comes at a time when the interest in the Seth Rich case has reached a peak. Independent investigators discovered that Bauman runs a foundation in his name, Disobedient Media Reports. Bauman Foundation, and on the board of directors sits David Brock, self-loving narcissist egomaniac who has made a career of attacking people on both sides of the aisle, but since 1997 has aligned himself with the Clintons, Soros, a liberal left. Media Matters for America, Correct the Record, and Share Blue. Brock is known for his use of censorship and online harassment. Matters reports Disobedient Media has previously reported that Brock and his affiliated organizations have ties to the Chinese government, interest, and organized crime. Brock's ties to foreign interests may mean that he is in violation of the Foreign Agent Registration Act, 22 U.S.C. S. 4. Brock's organizations have been active in harassing and attacking journalists looking into the Seth Rich story. Affiliates of Brock change.org to attack companies advertising with Fox 5 DC. The boycott campaign is organized by Carl Frisch, former senior fellow at propaganda group Media Matters for America, who spent his time helping develop long-term strategy to target Fox News as a political actor. Also targeted Fox News anchor Sean Hannity for discussing the case. Personal involvement with Brad Bauman only serves to intensify speculation about political interference and attempt to uncover answers concerning the death of Seth. Obedient Media has previously noted on noted an August 2016 tweet from WikiLeaks, which revealed that Bauman is a relations consultant working with the Postorium Group. From the Postorium Group reveals that Bauman previously worked for the DNC and the Service Employees International Union, the SEIU. The SEIU is the client of a group founded by Democratic operative 16 Creamer was implicated in footage obtained by journalist James O'Keefe, which revealed that Creamer was engaging in voting fraud and violent disruption of political events, sometimes using his connections, who were as clients of his. Representatives sending cease and desist letters on behalf of the Rich family have also the law firm at the center of the Whitewater controversy. Brad Bauman has in the past week insisted that anyone who continued to push the story either had a transparent political agenda or were, but given the intense attacks which organizations tied to David Brock have engaged in against any journalist discussing the Rich case, Brock's connections to Bauman intensifies questions about whether or not the DNC has become involved in the case out of ulterior motives. William Craddock put out a tweet that says, update, we just noticed that an affiliate of the Open Society Institute is also on the Bauman Foundation board. Story has been updated. Read more about Deepak Bhargava, and it gives a link that you can click. It says some history on the case. Tim.com, a famous internet entrepreneur and hacker, admits today that he was part of the operation along with Seth Rich to get stolen DNC emails to WikiLeaks. It wasn't Russia. 2016, 27-year-old Democratic staffer Seth Conrad Rich was murdered in Washington, D.C. The killer or killers took nothing from their victim, leaving behind his wallet, watch, and phone. Shortly after the killing, Redditors and social media users were pursuing a lead saying that Rich was en route to the FBI the morning of his murder, apparently intending to speak to special agent about ongoing court case, possibly involving the Clinton family. Seth Rich's father, Joel, told reporters if it was a robbery, it failed because he still has his watch, he still has his money, he still has his credit cards, and still had his phone, so it was a wasted effort, except we lost a life. He's posted a reward for information on Rich's murder. In August, WikiLeaks offered a $20,000 reward for information on the murder of DNC staffer Seth Rich. Julian Assange also suggested in August that Seth Rich was a WikiLeaks informant. And Mike Cernovich put out a tweet, says, was Seth Rich the source of the DNC leaks murdered? The next article, the minrec.com, says, report Murdoch's son silenced Sean Hannity on Seth Rich story. One of the sons of Rupert Murdoch, executive chair on Fox News, reportedly pressured Sean Hannity to drop coverage of the Seth Rich investigation. Rich was a DNC staffer during what police say was a botched robbery. Lack of evidence pointing to a robbery had Lack of evidence pointing to a robbery gone bad and vague accusations by WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange have caused people to ask questions. One of the more prominent people to investigate the Rich story was Hannity. But with the victim's family and scores of social media users imploring him to stop, Fox host announced he would no longer cover the story at this time. Now it appears one of Murdoch's sons also played a role in silencing Hannity. Big League Politics says Following Sean Hannity's embarrassing buckling on coverage of the Seth Rich case, news told Big League Politics that he was pressured by one of the Murdochs. One of Murdoch's sons was all up his ass over this, told Big League Politics. Statements on the show indicated he was cowering to Media Matters, who had called for a boycott of his advertisers. It seems that one of Murdoch's sons was actually behind it. During a broadcast of his show, Hannity said that he had spoken with the family of Seth Rich earlier in the day, and that out of respect for the family's wishes for now, I am not discussing this matter at this time. After the show aired, however, he claimed that he was inching ever closer to the truth behind the DNC staffer's murder, something he would not stop trying to attain. It says, okay, to be clear, I am closer to the truth than ever. Not only am I stopping, am I stopping? I am working harder. Updates when available. Stay tuned. I'm going to stop trying until I find the truth, Hannity told his audience. One of Murdoch's sons may have told him otherwise, however. Some have speculated that they were also behind the firing of another major Fox star, Bill O'Reilly. Is Fox trying to silence Sean Hannity? The next article is off of foxnews.com. One wanted secret communications channel with Russia, new reports allege. Jared Kushner, President Donald Trump's son-in-law, and one of the senior advisors in the Trump administration, was seeking a private communications channel with the Kremlin, according to a new report in the Washington Post. Kushner and Sergei Kislyak, it jumped on me. The Russian ambassador to Washington spoke of the possibility of coordinating a secret and secure communications channel between Trump transition team and the Kremlin. U.S. officials briefed on intelligence reports told the Post. At the same time, stated that Kushner had at least 3 contacts with Kislyak during and after the 2016 presidential campaign. Those contacts included 2 phone calls between April and November of 2016. 7 current and former U.S. officials confirmed the information with Rutgers. Jamie Gorelick, Kushner's attorney, told Rutgers that her client couldn't recall any phone conversations with Kislyak between April and November of last year. Mr. Kushner participated in thousands of calls in and he has no recollection of the calls as described. We've asked Rutgers for the dates of such alleged calls, so we may look into it and respond, but we have not received such information, Gorelick said. The Post and Kushner suggested the use of Russian diplomatic facilities as a way to shield pre-inauguration discussions with Kislyak from monitoring. Kislyak allegedly then relayed the suggestion to his superiors in Moscow. The idea was supposedly broached during a meeting between Kushner and Kislyak during an early December meeting at Trump Tower. That was based on intercepts of Russian communications that were reviewed by U.S. officials, although neither the meeting nor the communications of the Americans involved were under U.S. surveillance, officials told the Post. Michael Flynn, President Trump's former national security advisor, also attended the meeting. The meeting was initially disclosed in March by the White House, but the FBI now considers the meeting, in addition to another one Kushner had with a Russian banker, to be of investigative interest, Matter told the Post. Steve Bannon, to head the no, that's an ad. Wait a minute. The White House declined to comment on the report, as did Robert Kellner, a lawyer told Flynn, or a lawyer for Flynn. The Russian embassy did not reply to requests for comment. Kislyak was allegedly surprised by the suggestion of permitting an American to use Russian communications equipment at its consulate or embassy, as the proposal could have had innate security risks for both the Trump team and for Moscow. Communications of Russian officials in the U.S. are closely monitored by the FBI, which keeps ongoing surveillance of its diplomatic facilities. The National Security Agency, meanwhile, monitors Russian officials' communications overseas. News of the contents of the reported discussions comes amid recent reports that Kushner is under the FBI scrutiny as part of the investigation into possible collusion between Trump campaign and Russia. Russia is known for inserting false information into communication streams. It thinks, try that again, into communication streams it thinks may be monitored as part of an effort to spread confusion amidst U.S. analysis. News of the meeting first came by an anonymous letter in December. The letter noted Kushner's suggestion of the communication channel with Kislyak. Anonymous officials who reviewed the letter have since told the Post that the section mentioning the secret channel was consistent with their understanding of events. Kushner allegedly told the Russians that he was aware of the political sensitivity to, but that it was still necessary to communicate with Russian government officials. In addition to talk of coordinating the communication channel, Kislyak, Kushner, and Flynn also discussed arranging a meeting between a Trump representative and a Russian contact in a third country, the paper reported. That contact was not identified, according to the anonymous letter cited by the Post. The next article is off Liberty Writers. And it says, Bannon was right. FBI just leaked secret about Jared Kushner. That's really bad for Trump. Another day, another leak. If the FBI were a dam, it would be on the verge of collapse. Now, someone is telling NBC that they are investigating Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner has been named as the person of interest in the Russian investigation. The investigation stems from Kushner's multiple meetings with Russian Ambassador Kislyak before the election. Bannon has supposedly predicted earlier that Jared's interactions with Russians would be a problem for the White House in the future. Looks like he was right. However, this does not mean that Jared Kushner is guilty of any collusion. In fact, almost immediately after the story was published, Kushner released a statement promising he was going to and still will cooperate with FBI's investigation fully because he has nothing to hide. Either way, this is bad news for Donald Trump. He has enough of a heartache trying to right the wrongs of these past few presidents. The last thing he needs is this. Looks like that's the end of that article. Then the next one I have here, Max.com. And it says, Alan Dershowitz says civil liberties threatened with Kushner probe. Harvard Law School professor Alan Dershowitz said Thursday that reports that White House senior advisor Jared Kushner was under FBI scrutiny on Russian pointed to an inquiry that was being done backwards and raises great concerns about civil liberties. Usually, you can point to a statute and say, we're investigating crime under the statute, Dershowitz told Anderson Cooper on CNN, Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller. What Mueller seems to be doing, I don't like what happened. Maybe there was some collaboration. I can't figure out what statute was being violated, being investigated. At least we knew what statute was. And NBC News reported on Thursday that investigating Kushner's meetings last year with Russian Kislyak and a banker from Moscow. Jamie Gorelick, Kushner's lawyer, said that her client would cooperate with the probe. volunteered with Congress that he knows what he knows about these meetings, she said in a statement. He will do the same if he is contacted in connection with any other inquiry. Dershowitz had some advice for Gorelick, was former student. I would say first to investigators, before you talk to my client, I want to know what your authority is, what your jurisdiction is. Lacking that foundation, Dershowitz likened the Kushner inquiry to words of Joseph Stalin's secret police chief, Leventre, show me the man and I'll find you the crime. I don't like criminal investigations to start on hoping that once you have the target, maybe we'll find the crime, maybe we'll find the statute. And if we can't find the statute, we'll stretch the statute to fit the person. To ever see that come to America. Article is off of the Political Insider. So running in the wheel. Subject of FBI investigation after Bannon warnings. Months after White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon warned the president that Jared Kushner's ties with Russian officials could be detrimental to the administration, reports surfaced that there is an ongoing Kushner FBI investigation. Multiple news outlets have indicated that Kushner's and senior advisor is under FBI scrutiny in relation to the Russian probe. Times relayed in early April that told confidence that he believes Mr. Kushner's contact with Russia will become major distraction for the White House. Along with reports that his son-in-law failed to disclose business ties to far-left financier George Soros, could have raised eyebrows. President Trump. Daily Caller says news that White House advisor and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner is under scrutiny in the FBI's Russia probe. Almost 2 months after Chief Strategist Steve Bannon expressed concern that Kushner's meetings with Russian officials could harm Trump's presidency. Multiple news outlets reported Thursday evening that the FBI is looking into Kushner's meetings with Russian officials after the election as part of the probe into Russian election meddling. Kushner has not been accused of any wrongdoing. The news appears to vindicate Bannon's concerns that Kushner's meetings would be a major distraction for the Trump White House. Ever since he announced a bid for Trump has relied heavily on Kushner's advice has been made public about his political leanings or experience. Bannon, however, has been staunch supporter of the Trump agenda and of major media scrutiny. He sees himself as the keeper of Mr. Trump's campaign promises. Had Kushner seen himself in the same light, a keeper of Trump's campaign promises, a civil war would not have erupted within the administration months ago. The civil war was apparently won by Kushner, with Bannon reportedly seeing his role diminished. Now, however, Kushner alleged financial ties to Soros and meetings with Russian officials are threatening to derail the president's agenda. Trump should listen more closely to Bannon's advice. Bannon is a true believer in the Trump program, and Kushner is a dedicated globalist. This new revelation should further worry Trump supporters who have questioned some of Trump's actions that seem to contradict his campaign promises. This could be further proof that Trump is surrounded by those who oppose his vision and that Bannon's voice is more important than ever. Article is off of Liberty Headlines. And it says Trump finally orders probe of intel leaks. Trump Thursday ordered the Justice Department and other agencies to conduct a complete review of government leaks of sensitive information and hunt for culprits in the wake of a furor with Great Britain over publicly revealed intelligence. The alleged leaks coming out of government agencies are deeply troubling, Mr. Trump said in a statement. These leaks have been going on for a long time, and my administration will get to the bottom of this. His announcement came after British officials expressed anger that the U.S. leaked details of their investigation into the terrorist bombings in Manchester Monday that killed 22 people. Mr. Trump said the leaks of sensitive information pose a grave threat to our national security. I'm asking the Department of Justice and other relevant agencies to launch a complete review of this matter, and if appropriate, the culprit should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, he said. I have off Breitbart. This says ICE cracks sanctuary California, arrest nearly 200. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, called ICE, conducted widespread raids throughout greater Los Angeles area. 90% of those taken into custody had prior criminal convictions. A 5-day operation conducted by ICE targeting at-large criminal aliens, reentrants, and immigration fugitives concluded on Wednesday with the arrest of 188 foreign nationals, with 90% having prior criminal convictions, according to a statement from ICE. The prior criminal convictions of those arrested are 43 drug offenses, 27 domestic violence, 15 sex crimes, 12 battery, 7 weapons violations, 6 assaults, 5 burglaries, 3 fraud, 2 vehicle theft, 2 arson, 3 illegal re-entry and illegal entry, 2 cruelty to a child, 2 robbery, 2 obstructing justice, 1 of incest, slaughter, 1 of prostitution, 1 of larceny, 1 receipt of stolen property, 1 trespassing, 1 property damage, and 1 escape. David Martin, Field Office Director for Enforcement and Removal Operations, or the ERO in Los Angeles, said that operations like this are to keep communities in the U.S. safe by removing those who pose a threat. Operations like this are emblematic of the vital work ICE enforcement and removal operation officers do every day, seeking to locate, arrest, and ultimately deport at-large convicted criminals and other immigration fugitives who pose a threat to public safety, Marin said. By taking these individuals off the streets and removing them from the country, we're making our communities safer for everyone. Those arrested, 177 and 11 men and 11 women, are from a combined, with majority from south of the U.S.-Mexico border. 146 were from Mexico, 13 from El Salvador, 12 from Guatemala, 5 from Honduras, 5 from Armenia, 5 from Russia, and 1 from Vietnam, 1 from the Philippines, 1 from Yugoslavia, and 1 from Cambodia. That at least 8 of the individuals arrested are now facing federal prosecution for illegally re-entering the U.S. after prior deportation, a felony punishable by up to 20 years in prison. Those who are not undergoing criminal prosecution will be processed for deportation, while others who have outstanding orders of removal or illegally return to the U.S. will be subject to immediate returns home. California is one of only 4 states to be considered a sanctuary state, according to Center for Immigration Studies, which bases its assessment off of reports from ICE. The arrest took place in the following counties: Los Angeles 93, Riverside 26, 23, San Bernardino 21, Ventura 14, Santa Barbara 11, Breitbart, Texas reported on May the 17th that current figures from ICE show a 37.6% increase in the arrests of the illegal aliens in the first 100 days of an enacted executive order Donald Trump on January the 22nd. During the 100-day period, 30,473 of the total 41,318 illegal aliens arrested had prior criminal convictions, which represent a 20% increase in the total number of criminal illegal aliens arrested during the same period in 2016. Is off of Breitbart. MS-13 extorting sanctuary city businesses, police say. MS-13 is now using their growing power to threaten and extort immigrants businesses in America. The hyper-violent MS-13 gang is known for beheading, machete attacks, scalping, and gang rapes. Now they are extorting businesses by threatening immigrant families if they do not give money. The homicides, MS-13, it's just because we can, and we will of the fears that instills. Montgomery County, Maryland manager was also reported by the Washington Times to say. Information came during a hearing of the Senate Homeland Security Affairs Committee on Wednesday. The committee probed the rise of MS-13 and other transnational criminal organizations. The gangs in their native El Salvador is well entrenched. A police detective in Chelsea, Massachusetts, Scott Michael Conley, told the committee. The foundation is entrenched on the West Coast. They are progressing on the East Coast. That leadership base, more sophisticated gangs, said. The chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, Senator Ron Johnson, Republican of Wisconsin, said to those at the hearing the following. He said, during the committee's examination of America's insecure borders, we have learned how transnational criminal organizations and drug cartels exploit American policies and our lack of border security to advance their criminal agenda. Today, we continue that important work by discussing how the street gang Mara, commonly known as MS-13, and other Central American gangs affect communities throughout the United States. According to Suffolk County, New York Police Commissioner Timothy D. Siney, recruiting young people in our communities. They are recruiting recent immigrants because oftentimes they prey on people's fears, told the committee examining the MS-13 gang. Recent immigrants may not feel comfortable in coming to law enforcement. They are recruiting also very young. He said there was one instance in Suffolk County where MS-13 gang members recruited a 10-year-old. Manger told the committee the gangs surf the internet, building dossiers on potential recruits, the Times also reported. Chairman Johnson said that out of this flood of almost 200,000 unaccompanied children, USCAs, taken into custody during 2012 to 2016, 68% were males between the ages of 15 and 17. Obtained leaked images of the UACs in June of 2014, which showed not only the conditions of U.S. Border Patrol's processing centers, but also the deluge Border Patrol agents were facing. President Obama called the wave of unaccompanied children an urgent humanitarian situation, and his administration officials pictured these children as fleeing violence and poor economies, reported the Washington Post at the time. Uncovered the press conference on April the 11th this year in Houston when Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced the expansion of Texas Anti-Gang Task Force, called TAG, and the creation of Technical Operations Center. Houston is one of the 5 cities that the FBI has identified to have large MS-13 presence. In March, 2 MS-13 gang members appeared in a Harris County courtroom laughing and waving at news cameras after being charged with kidnapping and rape of a 4-year-old girl. And try that again. And the kidnapping, rape, and murder of another young girl in Jersey Village, a city within Houston metropolitan area. The murdered girl was allegedly killed as part of a satanic ritual. U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions said while visiting Long Island, the MS-13 motto is kill, rape, and control. I have a message to the gangs that are targeting our young people. We are targeting you. We are coming after you. Is off of Breitbart. It says thousands dropped off food stamp rolls in Georgia after state implements work requirements. Have dropped off the food stamp roll in Georgia as the result of state implemented work requirements for food stamp recipients. More than half, 779 people enrolled for food stamps in 21 counties. An estimated 7,251 people have dropped out of the food stamp program, a drop of 62%, the Atlantic Journal-Constitution reported. Georgia first rolled out its work requirements for the food stamp program in 3 counties in January of 2016. Since then, the state has expanded work requirements in an additional 21 counties, giving people in those 21 counties until April 1st of 2017 to find a job or lose food stamp benefits. Receive benefits must work at least 20 hours a week, be enrolled in state-approved job training, or volunteer for a state-approved nonprofit or charity. Say the plan is to extend the work requirement to all 159 counties in Georgia by 2019 and implement work requirements in 60 more counties starting in 2018. The greater good is people being employed, being productive, and contributing to the state, said Bobby Cagle, director of Georgia Division of Family and Children's Services. Views on the work mandate are mixed in the state, with some seeing the requirement as a way to get more people into the workforce and less dependent on government handouts, while others say it is an unfair measure to target the disabled who cannot hold down a job due to their impairments. Brandon Hannock, who represents the Progressive Advocacy Group, says people with mental health problems, limited education, and the physical disabled would have trouble trying to provide proof of their inability to meet the work requirements. Said, we're talking about one of the most basic needs, the need for food. Greg Morris, Republican of Ajalia, on the other hand, says that the decrease in food stamp recipients means that the work requirements are helping people become less dependent on government handouts, without protecting taxpayer dollars from abuse and taking people off the cycle of dependency, Morris said. The big drop in number, he added, shows how tax dollars when it comes to entitlements. Over the past year, the number of able-bodied food stamp recipients without children in Georgia decreased from 111,000 to 89,500. Decrease, said the AJC reported. According to the latest U.S. Department of Agriculture statistics for fiscal year 2017, 42,906,253 Americans food stamp program, a 2.9% decrease from fiscal year 2016 when 44,219,363 Americans received food stamps. What I have for you this morning is off BizPac Review, and it says it's official. Alabama governor signs bill protecting Confederate memorials. Alabama Republican Governor Ivey, there we go, signed legislation Wednesday that protects Confederate memorials from removal or modification. Specifically, the law bans removal or modification of monuments place for more than 40 years, according to the Associated Press. Schools that have borne an individual's name for more than 40 years can also not be renamed. And a commission must decide whether changes to memorials or schools between 20 and 40 years of age is appropriate. Ivy's signature comes following the Alabama Senator's approval, or try that again, the Alabama Senate's approval of the bill Friday. Republican Senator Gerald Allen, the sponsor of the bill, blasted what he described as a wave of political correctness against monuments dedicated to those who, despite their flaws, were significant to history. Senator Hank Sanders said Confederate monuments represent oppression to a large part of the people in the state of Alabama. Alabama's new law passed 5 days after the New Orleans took down 4 Confederate memorials. The law ensures that history for all generations, Daniel Sparksman, Deputy Press Secretary for Ivy, told the Daily Caller News Foundation. Sparksman stressed that the law was not about legitimizing discrimination. This bill is not about protecting discrimination. It's about making sure that we don't forget our mistakes. That's why Governor Ivy went ahead and signed this, because it's about protecting our history, not about protecting some people's history as opposed to others. It's about protecting everyone's history. Tried to satisfy both Republican and Democrats with the law by incorporating an amendment which was approved by a state legislator. The amendment stipulated that schools named after or otherwise dedicated to a person military service cannot be renamed without consent of the Committee on Alabama Monument Protection, but it can be relocated or altered. So there you have the news as I know it this morning. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up. Media so everybody gets to hear the news, and don't forget to subscribe. That way you'll stay informed. Have a great day.